Greetings all, and welcome to the 18th episode of the V.T.P, or the Veteran Trainer's Perspective. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that has been on the minds of many, both in recent times and in the past, and has been a pressing issue for the series as a whole for much of its life. Today, we're going to be discussing the creation of roles of remakes of older Pokemon generations, why they exist, and what they can bring to the table.
For many of us that have grown up with the franchise since its onset, we have been witness to a great deal of change and evolution over the long duration of the Pokemon series, and it is beloved to us for providing what it has always provided and much more. But it is important for reality to be addressed in knowing that not everyone that is a fan of the franchise has been a part of it for that long. A lot of people jumped into the series at a later date, and it is important to recognize this because it means that for a lot of them, the older generations were not something they were able to experience at the time of their inception, and with changing technology, might not even be able to access and play. In these cases, there is something lost in translation, as the kind of experience that we might have gone through is not something that can easily be replicated.
This, in part, is where remakes come through, as an opportunity to try and replicate past generations while still giving veteran players something to enjoy all over again.
This started all the way back in 2004 with the release of Pokémon Fire Red and Leaf Green, which were remakes of the original Generation 1 games, and was subsequently added onto with the likes of Pokémon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and then Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. To some, they might seem like pointless cash grabs. After all, why remake and release an old game when it really does nothing to add to the series? Well, that's the thing. They actually can and have added to the mainline series, and not only exist for important reasons, but have also helped to shape the way the series plays in turn. Both of these points are now to be broken down to see just what makes these remakes tick, and the reasons that go behind their creation, and what they can offer to newer and more experienced players alike. First of all, the most noticeable change that tends to happen with remakes is that the visuals get a major overhaul. This just makes sense from an aesthetic point of view, because if you're going to make an old game new again, it's logical to give it a graphical upgrade so it is on par with what games have been previously released with, or perhaps with an entirely new direction in mind, as seen in the Let's Go games. Even with the first games to do this, Fire Red and Leaf Green, they were made with the graphics of the Game Boy Advance in mind, a significant upgrade from those used in the original Game Boy games that started the series. If you really want something that is going to be eye-catching and really eye-popping to others, hoping to attract younger players into a game that essentially serves as a replacement of the original games, then this is the path to go down.
But aside from marketability, the practice is important because it keeps everything consistent and ensures that the graphic and visual fidelity of the games is clearly showing progress from when they were originally made.
They serve to highlight the advances in technology and style that have come with time, and demonstrate how the old can become new again from a visual standpoint alone. It's an opportunity for developers to show that they can make anything from the past all over again and not lose the charm or action that made the original so beloved, and in that stance, work to please both sides of the experience aisle when it comes to the series. Another critical change that has been seen in the remakes can be seen in the way that the stat formula for Pokemon has changed between the second and third generations. The original system was limited by the hardware of the time, and while it was decent for what it needed to do, in hindsight, it made actually getting a Pokemon to its max stats in any way, and still keeping it balanced, an extremely difficult thing to do, and a bit overpowered when push came to shove in the end result.
As a result, the entire system was changed in Generation 3 into the modern system of EVs and IVs that we see today.
This was a prominent change that made its way over to the creation of Fire Red and Leaf Green, and the release of these games was paramount in reinvigorating the console scene because it made it possible for players to get the Pokemon from that region and then trade them over to the newer games, part of Generation 3 at the time. While traders wouldn't be able to get their old Pokemon over from past games completely, it did provide a means of reliving that experience with upgraded mechanics, and in turn helped to link the first generation back into the mainline continuity in a way that could be both relived and connected to current hardware at the same time prior to the release of the Generation 1 games on Virtual Console. In a similar vein, the remakes of Gold and Silver worked to highlight another drastic change that was made to the main mechanics of the games when the split between physical and special attacks was made.
The types used to correspond to either physical or special in nature, and there really wasn't something that could discern the two within a type, which helped out some Pokemon, but equally made it hard to use Pokemon like Sharpedo with much effectiveness.
The split worked to correct this and helped to both balance and diversify the metagame and overall playing experience, and is now an essential part of the series. Heart Gold and Soul Silver were a prime test to see if the old games could make such a split work with their structure, and from personal experience, I can definitely say that it made gameplay a lot more refined and smoothed out for pretty much every aspect of the journey. Adding on to this, the remakes of the Generation 3 games brought in the newest major mechanic at that time, Mega Evolution. While not as groundbreaking as other major additions and alterations, this came with a multitude of new Mega Evolutions that did not exist in X and Y and helped to make the remakes more in line with modern mechanics in that fashion. Whether one thinks they were needed or not is up to debate, but as a whole, I do think that it was worth it and helped to add a new level of interest to these games for people that do not have the benefit of being able to play the Generation 3 games when they originally came out.
There are a lot of other tweaks to the mechanics of the games that I could get into detail on, but as a whole, I think it can be readily summed up in saying that remakes offer a chance to integrate new mechanics into older games to make them more interesting and engaging, as well as easier for newer players to get accustomed to.
Speaking on additions for the mechanics of games, while the long-term impacts of its inclusion is still uncertain, the Let's Go games introduced several different mechanics completely new to the series, such as a unique catching system and the introduction of candies that work to modify the stats of Pokemon directly. These systems, among other minor changes, work to really make the Let's Go games stand out from not just other remakes, but the rest of the series in general, and while it isn't quite certain what the long-term future of these mechanics are, I personally found them to be quite refreshing, as it really shook up gameplay and how the games could be explored and treated, and I wouldn't mind seeing at least some of these mechanics return into the future.
And in talking of refined gameplay, there is another thing that remakes can help smooth out: eliminating glitches that may have been present in the programming of older games.
Things like Missigno and the coin case glitch from the first two generations, although infamous and known well, were never intended to be a problem and could potentially deal some sort of damage to glitch the games as a whole, so removing them just seems like a natural thing to do. This hasn't always worked out perfectly, but refining the gameplay by eliminating many of these old bugs helps to make the experience more enjoyable to players that are looking to explore every nook and cranny of the games without unintentionally coming across something that could potentially ruin the experience or otherwise cause incredible confusion. Though some of these older glitches may be beloved to some, for the sake of making as complete and smooth of an adventure as possible, I can support the idea of remakes on this basis, if only to make it a universally enjoyed experience for the majority of gamers. Creating remakes also opens up the potential to make new content for the games that likely was not a part of the original games in order to flesh it out and make it feel more of a lengthy experience. This can be traced all the way back to the creation of Fire Red and Leaf Green, where a much larger post-game was introduced, as well as the Sevi Islands as a whole, helping to bring in Pokemon that were not just a part of the original 151 as seen in the Generation 1 games.
This kind of new content then went on further into things like the Pokathlon in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the Battle Frontier in said games, plus a new Safari Zone, Soaring in Auras, and much more.
These new additions to the gameplay experience help to make for a fuller experience in not just length, but also in the ability to make the games feel like more than just a retread of old paths. It gives an incentive for even people that have played the games they're originally based on to pick them up again for an entirely new experience, and when it comes to remakes, that part of the player fanbase can often be the most important to please. Slapping a new coat of paint on them and making them look nicer might attract some, but you really need to give new content with them in order to get veteran trainers excited for a chance to relive some of their old memories in a new way. Probably one of the biggest praises when it comes to remakes in the series is when they also manage to add new lore to the games they are trying to replicate for a newer audience. The older games were fine for what they were at the time, but as the video game industry has moved on and evolved, so have the tastes of gamers, and with RPGs, they often demand that a rich story of at least some sort be told these days to make it more engaging and interesting to players outside of just being something they can play.
The older Pokemon games didn't really have that, and that is more of a product of both the time when they are first made and the way they've been marketed to appeal to audiences outside of just Japan, but that doesn't mean that they have to stay that way.
Remakes assist in this change by providing new lore and story content that the original games did not have, and while some can be minor, such as providing tidbit information on gym leaders in Fire Red and Leaf Green, they have also helped to flesh out characters like the rival in Generation 2, showing why he is the way he is and his connections to other important figures in the lore of the games, and going even further in Auras, having shown the origins of the connection between humanity and Rayquaza, while also expanding on the origins of Mega Evolution as well as the efforts of Team Magma and Aqua. Lore might always not be a huge sticking point for many, but for my work it is essential, and these expansions make it worth my while to give these remakes a playthrough to see what they can tell me about the world of Pokemon that might not otherwise be fully understood or even known by the fanbase as a whole. Moving forward even more, it's been seen that remakes have also been used as a way of developing new technology and accessories to add to the gaming experience. With Fire Red and Leaf Green, we saw the introduction of something totally new, an adapter that allowed for wireless communication. With these titles, the days where you needed cables in order to trade became a thing of the past, and they would serve as a precursor for the eventual introduction of this kind of communication as a basic part of the hardware for the Nintendo DS. Heart Gold and Soul Silver also introduced us to the Pokewalker, which allowed players to actually take their Pokemon with them outside to not only train them, but also to find new and rare Pokemon that might otherwise have been difficult to obtain. Though this accessory didn't really last long after the game's release, it was still a unique piece of hardware that, in its own way, served as a test run before games like Pokemon Go would make the idea of going outside to play Pokemon a more successful idea.
While auras didn't really contribute much in the way of hardware, the Let's Go games did make a minor contribution in that they created the Pokeball controller for the Nintendo Switch, which, if I'm being honest, I preferred a lot more over the normal Joy-Con controllers playing both of those games.
Now, given all of the above, it would be reasonable to say that the remakes that we've gotten so far in the mainline series have provided a great deal of good to us, but it still begs the question as to why they're even made in the first place from a business standpoint. With everything noted, there are two last things to consider: popular demand and nostalgia. This was touched upon earlier, but the appeal of remakes is that they would be liked not only by new players, but also by the core fanbase as well. The novices get a chance to experience these generations they may or may not have played in a whole new way, and veterans will be drawn into them from nostalgia, a way to bring back memories of good times with the original games, while still getting something new and more in tune with what they expect from the games today. Nostalgia is always a great thing to exploit, because it can often work well to sell games if it is done correctly. And if it does well enough, it can often lead to popular demand of more remakes. Such was especially the case with people crying out for remakes of Generation 3, and they certainly got those remakes because the demand was likely to make them profitable to make, even if it did completely come at the expense of giving an actual end to X and Y and giving Zygarde the game or games it deserved to have. And we have to keep in mind that Game Freak, and by extension Nintendo, are groups that work to make money, so if they can capitalize on nostalgia and other factors to sell something, you best believe that they will commit to it and find a way to appease the majority of the fanbase, even at the expense of other potential projects. A lot of people are on the fence about remakes and what they can and cannot bring to the table and or offer, and in place of getting new generations, given all that has been covered above in my opinion, I am okay with remakes. Sure, they might just be retreading old ground to many, but as highlighted here, there are a lot of good reasons to make them, and they can be used as a vehicle for new types of content and features that can be taken advantage of in future installments, or at the very least, serve to make them stand out from the original versions they are based on. I think that their sparse use is good for the franchise, so it isn't a repeat every single time a new generation is about to end or even start, and as a whole, I believe they are worth investing in, if only to see how far we have come since the original versions have been released. They might not always completely hit the mark, but for what it's worth, it's a pleasure to see how remakes can bring new and old players alike together so they can enjoy the series and its past together, unmitigated by the limits of technology and time.
That's it for now, so stay tuned and keep your eyes peeled for the next time we revisit the Pokemon series, as we always do here at the V.T.P. Thank you all for watching this video. It is always a pleasure to help teach others about the world of Pokemon and the many facets of it that exist in both the world we call home and the world they call home. If you'd like, please leave a comment and subscribe and ring the bell to this channel to get regular updates on content and anything else that might be going on. You can find me and my written work on DeviantArt under the name Titus, and be informed of information and content uploads on my Twitter page and my Patreon page. Donations are always welcome. Always remember, the world of Pokemon is a vast and varied place, and there's no telling what secrets might be hiding just around the corner. So keep watch, stay vigilant, and always prepare for the unexpected. Until next time, have a wonderful rest of the day.